Hi, this is Rodrigo from Frame Freak Studio, and this is the Creative Hustler Show. Today, our guest is Nick Scarpino. He's one of the founders of Kinda Funny, which is pretty much like a business, an entertainment business that has a lot of shows. We have worked with them in the past, created the Kinda Funny animated series, and now he's pretty much here to talk about his experience, tips for beginners, and pretty much what it takes to create like this huge of a show. So welcome, Nick.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
So first of all, for the people who don't know about you, for the very few pretty much who have been living under a rock, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself, your history? How did you get started into pretty much doing all this?
Yeah, of course. I started in online media at a company called IGN about 13 years ago at this point. I got the job there to be on their video team, which was at the time like 3 people. And so I was one of the few people that was able to really cut my teeth at IGN during the time when a lot of people's habits were going from reading articles to then watching videos. This is a time I started working in the industry when we were still working with tape formats, and SD was the main format. HD was this weird, unheard of thing that we knew was around the bend, but wasn't quite there yet. And I started right around the time of the Xbox 360 launch, I think it was. Yeah, Xbox 360. And so we had to like figure out how to get HD signals in and all that stuff. It was really fun. But I worked there for a number of years, and it's there that I met the guys that I run the business with now, Greg and Tim. And we together decided that we wanted to start doing some stuff on the side, along with our old partner Colin as well. And so we started doing a couple podcasts on the side just for fun, just to have something different that was not gaming related. There's just silly stuff, and that started doing well for us. And then we decided a few years back to leave IG, leave the comfort of our jobs, and go try to form this business full time. And it worked out.
So this is something very interesting because I probably you have heard this a lot, and many people think this, like if you work in IGN, like that's kind of a dream job. Like most people would like to hold on to that. And what makes you kind of choose that? Okay, like this has been nice, but let's explore something new.
I think for me it was I was there for 10 years almost. Coming up on my 10-year anniversary was when I decided to move on. And I think that for me, I just wanted to try something different, and I wanted to vacate that spot that I had kind of taken up at IGN and let people grow into that role a little bit. Because I think all too often is you do run into a point where it's a very difficult place for someone to be, where you have a job that's comfortable. And it's a good job, and it's a job that when other people find out that's what you do, they're like, that's a really cool job. And you're like, it is a really cool job, but why am I not 100% happy right now? And it's because as a creative person, you have to be seeking out new challenges, and you have to be trying to achieve things that are just out of reach. And when you don't have a system in place to help keep you doing that, you start to get a little complacent. And I started noticing that I was not necessarily doing the work that I wanted to do, and that wasn't fair to the people around me. It's not fair to the company, and it's certainly not fair to IGN that I want to, go out there and maybe do some crazier stuff that's not in their ballpark of content they would provide for the audience. But it's not their fault that they don't do that. It's it's like if I want to go out there and do more comedy related videos, that's not IGN. They're a news and media website centered around video games and movies, and they're very good at what they do. And it's not to say they didn't have leeway to do more creative projects, but you can't stray too far away from that, or you're going to lose the audience. The audience goes there for a specific reason, and so you can't really be like, oh, I'm going to spring on these zany videos starring this guy you've never heard of before. They're going to be like, okay, I guess, whatever. So I think that right when I started to build this point where I'm like, I would like to go try something else, was when Kinda Funny came along, and it's when really that started to take off, and it just happened to be perfect timing, because before that, I really didn't know what I was going to do next. I knew that I wanted to move on, but I didn't know where to go, and I was looking at different places to go to, and none of it really blew my skirt up, so to speak. I just wasn't excited about anything, and this was the only thing that I thought was like, wow, this is a really cool, like, imagine if my life could be instead of getting in a car and trying to find parking downtown in San Francisco and dealing with that, what if I just went to my buddy's house every day at, same hours, but we just went and sat around his kitchen table and formed a business and then did a podcast out of a spare bedroom, and that could be my life. And it's weird that it was the first time I really did something in my life that was really about going and trying something new and just the sheer fun of it, and not really thinking about the financials. And then the financials kind of worked out, because even getting the job at IGN was, I'll be honest with you, and this is going to probably annoy a lot of people every time I say this, it does. I did not know what IGN was before I got the job there. Yeah. I was not a huge gamer back in the day. I was actually, after college, I'd really largely dropped out of the gaming lifestyle because I just didn't have time or money for it. Consoles were expensive, and I was like serving food at a restaurant and shooting wedding videos on the side and trying to make ends meet, barely being able to pay my rent. And I was working on edits and trying to teach myself After Effects and Premiere and Final Cut and all these programs that I didn't know how to use any of this stuff, but I just tried to give myself the marketable tools when I was younger. And so I didn't really know anything that was going on in the gaming sphere, and I just didn't have time. I didn't have time to dedicate 60 hours to a RPG. I was like, I barely have time to sleep. And so when I got the job at IGN, I was like, this is mostly just because it's a stable gig that has benefits that will allow me to shoot video and edit video and go places and meet people and get out of my comfort zone. And so I was like, absolutely, I'll take it. But when I had the interview, people were like, have you been reading IGN for a while? I was like, for as long as it's been around, which don't ask me what year it started, because I couldn't tell you. I was terrible.
To be honest, I kind of feel related to that history because before doing this business that we didn't know, I started my career as an entrepreneur doing like a kind of a website design kind of business and things like that. And I already got some experience doing marketing online, which at the time, especially in my country, was something new, and not many people were able to do it correctly. So that's when my partner called me to help him out for a project that he had, and I needed to handle the part of the business, and he needed to handle the creative part. But the thing is that neither of us had an experience doing that type of project.
Yeah.
We just kind of find an idea. So I started looking for Kickstarter projects who were similar to us. And then I found one that made almost $1 million, and emailed the creator of that project, and he said yes. And until he said yes, I started to look out who he was, and he was like Fred Seibert, producer of Castlevania and Samurai Jack and all the cartoons of Cartoon Network, and he blew my head, like pretty much like you say, like I didn't even knew who he was. It was like sitting here, a guy who just said yes to an interview, and he pretty much has been the producer of all the cartoons that I love as a child, and I didn't have any idea. And people get mad at me as well, because it's like, you didn't knew who Fred Seibert was. It's like,
but that's the thing. Like, I think that I look at it and I'm like, wow, that was so funny. People are like, wow, how could you not know what I did? You can't know everything. A, B, you take opportunities that come your way, and it's not, sometimes you don't have the luxury of having 5 great opportunities in front of you, one of which you know everything about and it's your passion. Sometimes most people, I think, probably just don't really know what direction to go in, and then when something comes their way, you go, okay, I'll just try this for a little bit and see. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And that's in a lot of ways, that's how Kind of Funny was born. Greg reached out and was like, we want to do a stupid series where I talk to my roommate Colin about whatever the hell he wants to talk about, but I need someone to come over and shoot it. And I was like, okay. And I grabbed Tim, and I was like, can you help me do this? Because I just need a second person to like monitor a shot. And he was like, sure. But it's like, I didn't have any expectation that was going to be anything. I just was like, that's kind of fun. And like IGN, when I got the interview, he was like, well, we're going to fly you to, like, you have to have a passport. We're going to fly you to like maybe Tokyo and maybe Germany and just different places. You're going to see the United States a little bit, go on gaming events, and just set up a camera for other people who know what they're talking about to interview these game developers. And I was like, that sounds great. Sign me up. I don't, that's cool. It sounds like a great opportunity. But I would say, like, I wish that going back, I did have a passion for gaming, because if you have a passion for gaming, and like I look at guys like Tim and Greg, and they are a great blend of tenacity, ambition, motivation, and passion. And I think if you can find that thing that ticks off all those boxes for you, you're going to have a good recipe for success. For me, I feel in a lot of ways that I'm really just starting my career as an entertainer. And I just started it really 3 years ago when I left IGN, because up until that point, I always sort of had a lot of my identity built up in me being behind the scenes, but I was really behind the scenes at a place where I had no business being the producer, because I was the person that always knew the least about what I was producing. And so now I'm kind of like, oh, I can cut my teeth on being on camera. I can shape the conversation toward things that I'm really passionate about, I'm interested in, I want to know more about. And I can learn as the audience learns, or even let the audience influence me and affect me. And I think it's just a great place to be. But it took 12 years of doing the wrong thing to get here. Oh, I shouldn't say the wrong thing. 12 years of doing something different that wasn't necessarily what I knew I needed until I got to this point. And then once we did Kind of Funny and it bounced, and I started doing podcasts and we left IGN, I was like, man, this is the life that I'm supposed to lead. I'm supposed to be this person. I need to just jump in head first and not worry about what's down there and just go and have fun.
Yeah, definitely. I truly understand that, because again, like that interview back then with Fred pretty much started with I did it, and if you see that interview, the first one that I posted here, like I was completely terrified. I was trying to do my best to keep my cool, but in my head it was like, do not fuck up, do not fuck up, do not fuck up.
But the thing about it is this, like I hear that a lot, and I had that as a part of me for a very long time, and it's an unfortunate sort of self-defense mechanism that you think you have to be perfect all the time. And I think for me personally, when I find that mechanism popping up in my brain, I don't let it take over anymore, because for the longest time it caused paralysis with me. Everything had to be perfect or I wouldn't do it. Well, guess what? That means I just wouldn't do things. I would have fun ideas and be like, I want to go do this, but it would have to be the perfect situation and this and that. And you just got to sometimes just start doing stuff. Like that to me is the most important part of any creative endeavor, period, is just start doing it. And if you think, hey, I'm not ready to do it yet because it's not going to be perfect, I got a rude awakening for you. It's never going to be perfect. You're always going to put something out on the internet, and one person's going to be like, this is pretty cool. I see the merit in this. I see where this is going. And then there might be someone else that's going to be like, this is dumb. This is dumb. I don't like it. And that's just the way it is. But there's comfort in that you can't please everyone. You're never going to put anything out. Like, name one movie that got put out in the last, like, popular movie that got put out in the last, like, 5 years that everyone unanimously was like, this is the best thing I've ever seen in my life. Most people go, I have my criticisms of these things, and that's just the way it goes. Knowing that, the importance is just to do things and get better at them and find a love and a passion for the process of them, not necessarily on the end product. And you're probably better now at interviewing people than you were that first time, right?
Yes, definitely. And funny thing that you say that, because something that I think was in the beginning I didn't saw it as valuable, but in the end it kind of became something valuable to me, was that when I was younger, I had this group of friends who were like really, really stupid, and I kind of vibed with them. And that was at the height of Jackass, and we kind of started doing the same thing.
Awesome.
But this is the funny part, like many of the things in business that I have been able to achieve now, many people, when they describe it as if I was some kind of genius or something like that. And,
sure.
And I can tell you that in the moment, that felt like when Johnny Knoxville say, "Hi, I'm Johnny Knoxville. Welcome to Jackass," and sometimes something really bad happened, and sometimes some truly great, and sometimes was just funny even. And a good experience. Yeah. But many of the biggest decisions that I had taken have come mostly from the frame of, oh, fuck it, like, let's do it and be stupid and see what comes from it.
I would wager to guess that the vast majority of people who've enjoyed a good level of success would say the exact same thing. which is I did not necessarily know what we were doing, but some spark of something happened and it was really exciting. And we just said, screw it, let's go try it. And then, yeah, it just snowballs from there. And it's not that easy, obviously. Like there have been a number of people who have tried to do something like Kind of Funny and have enjoyed varying degrees of success. We have a lot of friends who are way more successful than we are. And we have some people, that we know that are, still have to figure some stuff out. So it's always a spectrum of like what is good as what is bad. But I don't know a lot of people who are like, I'm going to be tremendously successful at something I hate and then actually are. Like, and you meet those people every once in a while that just like making money. And the ones that are best at it are the ones that just go, you know what I really like? Making money. And then so they don't care what they're doing. They get the thrill out of making money. But for a lot of creative people, I don't know too many people who are true creatives who are like, I'm super happy being an accountant. Like, it's not my dream, but I'm super fulfilled, because it's just not. You gotta go out there and just follow stuff that gets you excited, and then go do it, and then just say, screw it, I'm gonna do more of it,
Yeah, something that I like from your interview with Adi Shankar was this thing that he has, like he's a great producer, he has money connections and all things, and yet he uses his free time to create this the Butley Universe, these short videos that are pretty much fan base. You can say, like,
they
fan-made.
are. And it's sort of a weird counterintuitive reality, right? It's the old adage, if you build it, they will come. And that is very, very true. There's two ways to approach trying to be successful in entertainment, right? It's trying to figure out what the trends are and trying to game the system and trying to figure out how to emulate what other people have done before and just iterate and do better. And that can work. Or I'm going to go out there and just do stuff that really speaks to me and try to do it in a way that gets my voice across to people, but also is maybe something people haven't necessarily seen before. And that inspires people. And I'll tell you what, when you're talking about people who are looking to invest in you as a creative, they don't necessarily want you to be a cookie cutter version of what came before you. They want you, like, the onus is on you to wow them. And wowing them means show me something different, show me something crazy, tell me something I've never heard before, say something to me that's going to make me laugh that I've never laughed before. Like, do something that's different and that blows people away. And the only way that I know to do that is by trying to do crazy stuff every day and being true to the things that I love. And yeah, I don't do stuff that's amazing all the time. It's not like that. I don't barely do anything that's amazing, period. But every once in a while, we have strokes of genius that landed us kind of funny. We are like, oh, it'd be cool if we did this. What if we left everyone's dream job and decided to work out of our friend's spare bedroom? And if I told my mom that, she'd be like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. Don't do that. But to a lot of people who are living a life of, maybe they're doing a job that they don't necessarily want to be doing, or they're not that excited about it, the prospect of leaving that job to go do something you are excited about is a very, very powerful currency. And I think that's something that inspires people. And I think that's one of the reasons why we thrive to this day, which is just that we are so many different things to so many different people, but that is one of them.
Yeah, definitely. This is weird that you mentioned. I think there is a lot that I can relate to, because the first business that I had was like pretty much what you just say, that, oh, let's do it for the money. And I really didn't care at all website design. I was just there to gain the experience,
sure,
and get the money. And there were some good things that came out of that, because since I didn't care about the idea, I wasn't so attached with it, so I was able to experiment a lot more. But when the opportunity started with my now partner to do this thing, like, we pretty much broke a lot of conventional things doing Frame Freak Studio, because for the first year we didn't have like a website, we didn't have a name, we were just operating like a group of freelancers of a group of friends working on things that they like. And by the end of that year, like, we had like 8 interviews with really great people, like Tom Moore from Cartoon Saloon, like Oscar winner, and things like that. But at the same time, it wasn't making money yet, and there was a client that a small client that we were getting at the time, and she said like, okay, yeah, we like to do business with you, but you need to have like a corporate image.
Yeah.
And that was the point where we said like, okay, yeah, we have like 1 year already, and we haven't even selected a name. But at the end, I remember sitting down and thinking, okay, this thing, the website design is still giving me money, and this other thing is not giving money yet, but I really, really like it, and I see that it has potential to become something bigger. And I got to the point where I couldn't handle the two of them. Like, they were taking too much time, each one. So it was either focusing on one or focusing on the other. And I chose to focus on this, obviously. Pretty much abandoned the other thing that was giving me the money. And for 3 months, it was like really bad, but I still working hard. And the first thing that I realized was that there was a point when I like I just did 3 times the work that I have done with the other business, and I feel really cool. And if I had done 1/3 of this type of really focused and hard work with the previous business, I will have been totally burned out. Like,
yeah,
done for 2-3
weeks. Hated your life. Yeah.
Yeah, and that is the first thing that I realized, that I still feel good. Like, I was doing 3 times more, putting a lot more effort, and I didn't even feel it. And I pretty much went on for the first year, like going really, really, really hard, and didn't feel it at all. And that made this business get the first money for the first time. And pretty much, as you say, like, the financials just work itself out eventually.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing too. Like, when I left IGN, my thought process was, I'm like, well, I used to freelance a lot, right? I used to do like freelance corporate gigs and stuff like that, where I just go out and produce video for big companies around the Bay Area. And I have a friend of mine that still runs a pretty lucrative company to this day that does that. And I thought, I'm just gonna. What I looked at it was, and I was in a different place than I think a lot of people are, because I was in mid-30s, and I'm like, I've got some money saved up, and if push comes to shove, I can live off that and maybe find a different gig. But what I thought was, I was like, I'll probably split my time half with kind of funny, and then half just producing a couple corporate gigs here and there, like once, like a couple days a week, where I just go out and like interview some talking heads and about whatever the latest products that company X has going on. And I was like, I'll be fine. I might not make as much money, but the way I looked at it was, I was like, I got to just try, give myself this space once in my life to just don't worry about the money. Take it on faith that you're a highly employable person who has lots of friends that will help him out, and go out there and follow this and just chase this thing down as much as you possibly can. And then, of course, I was expecting, like, when I envisioned what the success would be, I was like, well, I assume that within the first year, maybe we'll get to a point where maybe I could just do that full time. And then we launched our second Patreon January 5th, the day that we announced that we were leaving. And both of our Patreons went to the point where I was like, oh, nope, I'm doing this full time now. So the earmark, or the sort of benchmark that I thought we were going to hit by the end of that year, was hit within 24 hours. And I'm like, wow. I mean, it's incredibly fortunate and incredibly amazing that people were inspired enough by our story to come out and actually like give us money for that, and continue to support us for that, because they continue to do that to this day. But it was very eye-opener. It was almost one of those things where I'm like, what if we had done this sooner, or I could have taken those risks earlier, before I had a wife, before I had things I had to worry about. So I always tell people, when you're young, I'm like, now is the time to take risks and go get the experience that you need to go ultimately be doing the thing you want to be doing. I'm not saying people should quit their jobs at 22 and go form a company, because you'll be, the other downside of that is you do need to get marketable skills, and you do need to cut your teeth, and you do got to pay your dues. And I don't know a ton of people who have been like, I'm going to just follow my passion straight out of college and have that work necessarily 100%. Sometimes you do have to take jobs that you don't necessarily aren't 100% into, just to pay your bills and get some experience and meet the right people and network and start to build that life for yourself. And that's not it's a grind for a reason. You got to keep grinding out no matter what you're doing.
Yeah, and I think this is something that has changed in the last years. That there was this advice that were given to young people that were like, oh, you're young, like, just have fun and enjoy, because later you're going to have to work and have responsibilities, and you're not going to be able to do many of these things. And now I think it's becoming more like, no, you're young, you don't have responsibilities, you can take this risk. Like, you can start when you're 15, and and when you are 22, you will already have like 7 years of experience doing this thing, and probably you will have, if you have your Patreon, maybe you will not be a millionaire, but you will have enough money so you don't have to go and work, take a job that you hate. And it is crazy for me that 10 years ago, if somebody will come, well, maybe a little bit more, but somebody will come and say like, oh, I just want to smoke pot and and play video games, everybody will be like, no, man, like, wake up, like, you have to take some responsibilities. And now somebody can say like, hey, I just want to smoke pot and play video games, and now he can be a Twitch streamer, and pretty much get much more money that way. And that thing, I think it's really crazy. It's great, but it's crazy.
Well, and to to a lot of people's defenses, like, we couldn't have done what we do now without resources like Patreon and YouTube. And so, when I was out of college in 2002, it's not like I had a lot of choices of like, I'm going to go be my own celebrity. That's not how that worked. It was, I had two choices: move to LA and try to be in the film industry, or just start shooting whatever I can get my hands on. And that was pretty much it. Now there's no excuses for not doing what you want to do. There's so many resources available to people that really the hardest thing in life, I would imagine at this point, is for people to actually know what they want to do. If you have the people I envy the most are guys like Greg that just had this clear concept of who he wanted to be when he was young. He's like, I want to be a journalist. I want to be in the games industry, and I want to be a journalist. And I think he knew he loved games and he knew he loved journalism. And then the system just came around where it's like, oh, all of a sudden people are writing about games. That's a no-brainer. And then he just applied to IGN like 100 times until finally they were like, we better hire this guy because he's killing a lot of trees with these applications. So, I think having a good sense of who you are is really difficult. And I didn't have that really until probably my mid-30s. I didn't really know what my purpose in life was supposed to be until I started doing this, and then admitted to myself that this is what I wanted to be. But I do kick myself. Like, I used to, I grew up in Southern California, and now I'm doing stand-up comedy, and I just kind of wonder, I can't help but wonder what life would have been like if, while I was in college, if I just drove out every day to the Improv or to a comedy club and just started cutting my teeth there at 18 instead of 36. I think I'm smarter now and I can write better jokes now, but you never know where life's going to take you if you start and then just put 10 years into something and grind it out every night and then see what happens.
Yeah, definitely. And just to make a point to what you just say, like, that there is truly no excuse to not do it. Again, like, I come from El Salvador, and it's, over here is hellish, man. Like, it can be really hellish. And even here, like, where we don't have, the country itself doesn't have like even access to PayPal. So if you want to use national methods to get money online, it's really impossible. There is not the infrastructure to do that. Now there is a lot of alternatives on the internet that don't have to go through the government that is like outdated and have systems from the 60s that have been even looked upon since then. And now we even have when we started working with you, in the first time we took it through PayPal and another thing called Pioneer, but in that month was when we finished all the things to register our business in the US, and now the same program that we use to register our business in the US and pretty much allow us payments from all over the world has become so much better since the time that I took it, that I tell people all the time, like, I had to go through shit that nobody else will have to go through ever again.
Yeah.
Like, there's really, really no logistical limitations anymore at all. Like, even if you are in the worst of the country, like if you have internet connection, that's it. That's all you need.
I know
and what you just said, like, the last limitation will be like truly knowing yourself, what you're really good at, and pretty much breaking those mental barriers that say, oh, I cannot do that, because I thought I had many of those that I didn't think like, I don't think I can do that, and then something even bigger happened, and it was like, wow.
Well, I mean, that's the thing though. Like, what we do is not necessarily the easiest thing to be successful at, right? Doing anything in a creative medium is not necessarily a necessity for a lot of things. So there's a huge demand for entertainment, but there's an even bigger group of people out there that will raise their hand and be like, I'll do it. So it's competitive. But I think that I don't like the idea of, competing with other people. I think when I look at some of the hardest things that I've ever had to do, or the situations that I have to be in, really have to do with me competing with myself, me getting in my own way, me just letting fear or my own insecurities or my own lack of motivation or ambition really be my own worst enemy. And I've done a lot of work personally and mentally on that in the last few years that I think have been really, really powerful. But, no one ever told me that I could do this, but no one ever told me I couldn't. I had very supportive parents that were like, you can do whatever you want, but nobody specifically pulled me aside and was like, you're funny, you should do this thing, or you could succeed. And I never had a mentor character come and tell me that I'm special. So, you kind of have to be your own cheerleader. And the one thing that I have learned in the last, 10 years is that really sort of time and motivation are the two biggest factors for success. If you dedicate a lot of time to something and grind away, like if you have a lot of motivation, you dedicate that over a long period of time, and you just grind, you will look back and you will be ahead, and you'll be ahead of the pack. I guarantee it. Because all the other people who could have been successful at that point will probably have quit by now, because they will not have seen gains. They will not have seen progress. And then you'll look back and be like, oh, I've been doing this for 15 years and I can pay my bills as an entertainer. That's weird. Like, I can't point to too many of my friends that I have a lot of friends now in the entertainment industry, but I mean, like, friends that I had when I was in, my teens or 20s or whatever. A lot of them were just like, I don't want that lifestyle. But to me, there's nothing better than failing at something that you love. Like, I'd rather fail at something that I love than mildly succeed at something that I just fucking dread every day.
Oh yeah, you know what's really the worst? When you truly believe that you want something and you work really, really hard for it, and when you finally get it, you realize that it's not at all what you expected, and it's really bad. that really sucks.
That happens, and I think also what happens is you have an expectation of what success or what that thing is supposed to be, and you get it, and it's different, right? And I think that's just life. Like, at this point in my life, I fantasized about being a film director. I thought, like, I'm gonna make Oscar-winning movies and accept Academy Awards and do all this stuff. And that was a fantasy that I never even tried to track down. I think I just fell in love with the idea of that as being what my expectation of success would look like. And then I turn around and I look at what I have now, and I'm like, I could not have imagined doing this when I was young. But it's different, but it makes me happy. So it can't be wrong, because it's cool, and I look forward to going to work every day. So that's just the way it goes. But I guess my point is, like, you just don't, like, you got to put creative energy out into the world as much as you possibly can on as much of a consistent basis as you can, and have a rough direction for where you want it to go. But man, if it puts you in a different path, go with it. Sometimes you just got to go with the flow and go where the river's going to take you, and it will. I just know that if you put enough time into something and you're passionate about that thing and you're being honest and self-critical with yourself, you will find it eventually. You will do it, unless you're a singer who is totally tone deaf, you will be able to enjoy some level of success in life doing what you want to do. The question becomes, how much are you willing to put in? And is there a threshold at which you go, this is just not worth it, I don't want this enough,
Yeah, something that a friend told me recently was that something he's basing now his decision is that when he's thinking about doing that, is it like a fuck yeah kind of thing, or is it like yeah, that would be kind of, I will kind of like it or something. And if it is not like this fuck yeah, then he doesn't do it.
Well, you have to be careful with that, though, right? Because the fuck yeah sort of thing is the really exciting idea, right? The really exciting, like, I would love to be an internet influencer who's got, a decent following on YouTube and on Twitter and can make money just sharing his ideas and perspectives about life. and grow a celebrity and grow sort of a level of notoriety within the community. That sounds awesome. That's super exciting. That is a great goal that might take 10 years, might take 20 years. So that's a fuck yeah goal, but every day is going to be, oh, fuck, all right. It's going to be a grind. And like we talk about when we first started doing our first podcast, we used to leave IGN around 7:00 and we'd get dinner and we'd go every week over to Greg and Colin's spare bedroom and do this podcast until 11:00 at night. And it was really exciting at first. And then by week 4, we were just like, oh, do we really want to do this? But so you have to keep the longer term goal in mind and that excitement in mind, but also know that you're going to have to grind. And there's a lot of fun and beauty in the grind, but it's also a grind. Like at a certain point, you're like, I am working. I just have to keep perspective and find those moments of triumph and take stock of what I have right now. So, like, because I get really excited about ideas and then I just let them falter because sometimes the number one thing I've seen is that people are okay living in the fantasy of what something could be because they don't want to actually put the time into going and chasing that down. And that's a very common thing, and it's a very dangerous thing if you're a creative, because it's way more fun to sit around with your buddies and get a beer or a cup of coffee and fantasize about being a filmmaker than it is to go out and be stuck in your room for 6 months straight writing scripts that maybe no one will ever give a shit about. So you have to separate the fantasy from the reality, and then once you live in the reality, you got to grind on that thing until you make it what you want to make it, or some semblance of that.
Yeah, definitely. My friend, in this case of my friend, like he has like a really great self-awareness.
Okay.
So he really, I think he knows when his voice is telling him like, yeah, this is the path that you should go. On the other hand, what you just mentioned is just true. Like, I think it's really important that the goal that you're pursuing, okay, it is really easy to imagine the good times, I should say, but also this goal has to be great enough and motivate you enough so that it is worth it, even in the hardest scenarios, even in the hardest of time. And this is something that I truly felt with this one, because it's like, okay, I had moments where doing this business, doing Frame Freak had its lows and was just brutal. And even in those moments, I can see, and it's like, even living through this shit, I can tell you, it feels so much better than when I was doing my first job at a call center. That, and that is something that, so far, even the hardest moments have never felt so bad as the things that I have felt in the past doing other things. And I think that's a really important thing to consider as well.
It's very important, and and that's how you love it, right? Is you love it because when the times are hard, when the times have been so slightly difficult, they're kind of funny, they've been hard, and it impacts you in a different way because you care more. But you're also, I like to say, like when we left the farm, kind of funny, the peaks and valleys all of a sudden got way farther away from each other, right? Like IGN, I was always like here, where I was like, well, the bad times are kind of down here, but the good times are only kind of up here. And like my successes that I'm enjoying, I'm like, they're fun, but they're not that great. But it's kind of funny. It's like, holy shit, we just did this amazing thing. This is like the best high I've ever felt in my life. But then when like Patreon takes a dip or something bad happens, I'm like, oh my God, this is the sky is falling and I have to deal with this because there's no one left. I forget who said it, but there was another great piece of advice that I think I've read in like Tim Ferriss's book. And I forget, he did a great book where he took excerpts from his conversations that he had with like very, very successful people and just kind of boiled them down to some of the lessons that he learned. And one of the people said a really interesting thing that it kind of stuck with me, where he was like, there's a difference between a dream and a goal. And to him, goals are things that actually happen. Dreams are something that you have that you don't ever intend. Like, it's a difference in mentality of like, I have a dream that I want to do this thing. If you say that to yourself, it's a lot different than if saying my goal is to become one of the best stand-up comics in San Francisco. Like, that's a goal of mine. It's not, my dream is, wouldn't that be great? My goal is, I better get my ass out there to a mic. I got to go to my showcase tonight at 7, and I better do a mic afterward. I better grind, because it's a goal now. I've admitted to myself that I want it. And I think that's a very powerful tool that I could have used in my 20s, where if people were like, if your goal is to be a filmmaker, like your dream to be a filmmaker is you're sitting around at a coffee shop in Southern California smoking cigarettes and shooting the shit about why Quentin Tarantino is the second coming of Christ. If your goal means get your ass to LA and get on a film set, what are you doing? Like, you can do that right now. And I think it's important to yourself to have that power of positive affirmation.
Yeah, and there is another case that I just remember. There's this guy, Devin Supertramp, probably you already seen it. There was one of his first videos when he was like filming places, and he was talking about his experience that he had to wake like at 4 a.m. and he has been traveling to this place where he wanted to film, and pretty much since he didn't have much money, he was sleeping pretty much in the streets in his vans and charging his equipment in McDonald's and things like that. Then when he was at the place, he had to wake up at 4 a.m. and the place was not usually accessible. He had to even go and swim for like 30 minutes in shark-infested waters, then climb through some small mountain until the moment he got to this place and film. And at the end, the final product, the film, that he only used 3 seconds of that film in the final video. And it's like, when he realizes, it's like, I just went to this trip, but these 3 seconds in this video like made it worth it. And it just makes you think, like, how many people are willing to do that kind of thing, sleeping in the streets, in the van, in the cold.
The thing about that, and I think this is another key piece of advice that I try to just remember every single day I do anything, which is that the end result should probably not be the goal. The end result should be the sort of what's the term I'm looking for? I guess the end result should sort of be the reward for having the goal. And what I mean by that is, if you take, like, I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, right? That is something I'm tremendously bad at. And it is a tremendously hard thing to do. And my goal is to get a blue belt in it. It's the first belt you can get, and it takes a really, really long time, and it's really, really hard. But when I get that, it's not necessarily about like, oh, I'm all of a sudden like good at jiu-jitsu. No, I get the belt because I put the time in, because I enjoyed the time on the mat, because the process is really what I focused on. And it's the same with entertainment, in that if you only derive pleasure from the moment you see the final thing, it's not gonna work for you. You know, this process is way too long and laborious and arduous, that if you don't derive some sort of sick pleasure out of sleeping in your van and like swimming in shark-infested waters, then this is probably not the field for you. You gotta love the process. The process is the best part. If you don't get enjoyment out of the process, then you're doing it for the wrong reasons. You're doing it because it's cool. You think it's cool to be a YouTuber or to be a filmmaker, not because you actually enjoy and are super passionate about getting that right image in the can, or really working with the technology that inspires you. Because some of the people that I know that are super successful are just the ones that, like, it wasn't about having necessarily like this vision of who they were. It was just, they picked up a camera and was like, this is really fun. I'm going to go do this. And you're like, why are you doing that? That makes no sense. And they're like, I don't know, I just love it. And then all of a sudden, 10 years later, they're shooting freaking, studio pictures. And you're like, that's awesome. But like, so you have to really, really appreciate that. And you have to really respect that. Otherwise, you'll burn out fast.
Definitely. Also, something I wanted to ask you, and this is something maybe more technical. You're kind of funny, do a lot of shows. So pretty much the question will be, how do you approach doing so many projects and actually doing them like consistently, and coming up with these ideas for, okay, we're going to do this show and this show and this show, and we have to kind of arrange it in a time frame because everybody has 24 hours. So
yeah. I mean, that's a big logistical production decision, and we talk about that all the time. We have issues with it still. It's hard. We do 2 daily shows that are about an hour apiece on Twitch, and then we do 2 other podcasts per channel, so like 4 more podcasts per week. So it's a lot of moving parts, and we end up not people are out, people have to sub in. We always have to have that conversation. I feel like we're really good at having a system in place that's pretty turnkey when it comes to the actual production. Because what I wanted to do when I formed the studio, when we actually came out and got a space and put all the cameras and all the equipment together, was have it be. I wanted to make sure there was a path of least resistance to us doing whatever the main product was that we were going to do. And the main product is a podcast. So we have a studio that is probably one of the simplest to use in the world, that is as professional as it possibly can be, that will allow, with very little experience, someone to come in, click a couple buttons and hit record, and we are off to the races doing what we need to do. The bigger issue that we have right now that we still have to solve for is how do we do bigger and bigger productions like the animated series? Because, when you guys came into the animated series, we were sinking. We were 6 months behind, and we needed help with that. And you guys ended up being a very valuable resource for us for that, because we had just bitten off more than we could chew.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Really, and by the way, like, we really love that, doing that. I have to be honest with you now. There was kind of a twisted passion that I had about Kind of Funny, because, well, you say you have people to support you. I have the opposite. Like, I have met, maybe for 15 years, people who were telling me since school, like, you cannot live out of doing like little drawings. In Spanish they call it dibujitos, but it will be like cartoons or something like that. But it's like a dismissive kind of term, and it's like, oh, you cannot live out of that. And I used to be the kid who didn't put attention to class, and now because he was drawing, and I was hearing that through. I heard that through many years, and when we were working with your series. Which, on top of that, it was like not like a serious production, but something like really funny and goofy. There was this kind of twisted pride that I had, that I wanted to go to the people who told me that I couldn't live out of this, and it's like, in your face.
I mean, again, that's a very solid motivation. I don't have kids, but if I did, I would try to impart to them, and I try to do this with a lot of younger generations, where, man, I don't know where this myth of you can't do something came about. Because if you can point to someone out there that's doing that thing, then you can do that thing too, right? If someone were to come to me and say, Nick, it's you can't physically as a human being fly. Like, you can't fly. I'd be like, I buy that, because I've never seen another human being self-propel themselves into the air like Superman. But if someone said, Nick, you can't go to the moon, I'd be like, Elon Musk is doing it. Why can't I do it? And like, you have to be that kind of person who for the longest time, I was the kind of person that would be like, oh, you're right, I can't do that. I'm not that person that can do it. But it's not true. You're just bullshitting yourself. You can do anything. You can be a commercial director. You can make cartoons. You can be a film director. You can be. There's thousands of people doing those jobs. It's difficult. It takes a lot of tenacity and networking and experience and grinding and time, and you have to prioritize that above all else. And you're probably not going to be able to have much of a life beside that. But there are people doing these things. So don't fucking tell me that I can't do that thing. Because I know there are people who are making a living as a stand-up comedian. So when I told people I want to be a stand-up, they're like, that's interesting. I'm like, but people could do it. And I could do it. I just need to put the time into it and really love it and nurture it, and I'll be able to do that. Granted, I don't need to make money as a stand-up because I have Kind of Funny, but when I envision the life that I want to lead, there's no reason why I can't be that person. And so that's what I'm going to go do. And then the thing for me is I can't do anything else. So it's either fail at the things that I love, or that's it, or succeed at the things I love. Those are the only two options. There's no third option of go be an accountant somewhere else. And again, I hate to shit on accountants, but if that's what you wanted to do in your life, that's great. But that's just not something that I would ever be able to happy do,
Yeah, definitely agree with you.
Yeah.
And even when you just say like, oh, people cannot fly. Just reminded me of this incident a couple of years ago. That wasn't that long ago. That there was this group of people who, well, they had this idea of humans cannot fly, and then the next thing you know is that they are building these suits, and now they
Yeah,
are jumping themselves
exactly. Or
out of
there's the guy,
mountains, and they are flying. Like, what the?
or there's the guy that built the Iron Man suit. And that's the thing too, as a creative, if that's almost a perfect example of why you should do those things. Because if I told you humans can't fly and you went, fuck you, I'm going to try it, and you succeed, you will be the first person to ever do that. And that's huge. That's built-in marketing right there. All of a sudden you're a badass because you're the guy that did the one thing that no one else even thought to do. And so that's really where you have to choose to be that person and then chase it down. You have to go after it. You have to be the person who's going to think differently, and there's an awesomeness to that.
Definitely. Also, for people who are starting into that, into trying to find what they love, is there something that you didn't expect at all? This is the type of questions that I do to find the things that I don't know, you could say. But
yes.
Was there something that you didn't even think about that you discovered through your career that now you think is really important and that people starting out needs to know?
Sorry, so the question was, what are some of the things I didn't know?
Yeah, and that became really important. And also on top of that, what type of advice do you think people starting out are receiving that they should ignore?
That's great questions. I mean, there's lots of stuff I didn't know when I formed the business. I didn't know how to run a business. I didn't know how to do taxes or any of that stuff. And I didn't know that I would ever need to necessarily know that, but it's stuff that I actually kind of dig because I kind of like the aspect of the administrative work and being able to make sure that stuff's done for the company and it's buttoned up and it's all good to go so that people can just come in here and enjoy being creative and doing their job, There's also, I didn't know that there was going to be that I guess the big thing was I didn't know that there was going to be that process, that creative process mirrored in everything that I do. I just always assumed that we'd get to a point where it was, we hit a level and then everything was easy, and time and time again in everything across my life, I see the same pattern happening where it's, wow, this thing that I'm trying that's new is really hard. Oh, I should quit. Oh, what if I don't quit? Okay, I didn't quit. Oh, it's still hard. Oh, that was a fun day. And then the next day is, oh, that was hard again. So it's always, I feel like no one ever told me that it was going to be an uphill battle forever. Always. And that's just the way it is. But knowing that now, I'm like, oh, okay, there's comfort in that because if I know that I have to work, it's like when you do the animated show. If you know you got to work a 16-hour day, you just work the 16-hour day, right? If you know your day tomorrow is going to be 12 hours, you go, all right, my day tomorrow is going to be 12 hours. What if I told you the rest of your life was just going to be really hard work that was punctuated by these moments of pure awesomeness and the reward of feeling like you've accomplished something, but then probably even that same day, whatever else you're trying to do makes you feel like someone just took a dump on your shoes. If that's going to be the case, just that's life. And then you go, oh, okay, cool. And suddenly when things go wrong, you're like, well, all right. When something's not as good, when I bomb at a mic, it's like, whatever. Doesn't matter because I had a great show this morning and tomorrow I'll have another opportunity to succeed. And that I think is what a lot of people don't realize is that really life is not a sprint. It is a marathon and you got to hunker down for it. And you just got to enjoy every step of it, even the stuff where you're having failures, because you learn so much more from your failures than more often than not your successes.
Yeah, something that I really learned, this was like a really transformative experience. When we were in the middle of the production of the animated series, I moved to live in Europe, and I had a lot of fears, and I had also some expectations of what I could achieve there. And the funny thing is that none of the fears ever happened, like absolutely none. And the things that I expected going well for me there were small compared to the things that actually happened there. But something that I truly learned that really marked me when I met some big people over there was their ability to have, let's say, clear cuts. So, for example, when you say, okay, you have to work for 16 hours, like they are there, like they
Yeah.
are really there, focused, and you see this person, and it's like they look so serious, and I was like kind of aware of myself, trying to approach to them, and kind of, I don't know, have respect, not trying to anger them. And then maybe there was an opportunity where I saw them at a party at a club, and they were a completely different person.
Oh,
They were nuts, and they had that like, and this is something that I see when entrepreneurs and artists start talking about working for these long hours, that they start putting some excuses about, oh, what about family, and what about this, and what about that. But they say, okay, what about family? And then when I see them in action, it's like, oh yes, I'm in my house with my family, but I'm not putting attention to them. I'm
mhm.
just watching the TV, maybe with a beer next to me, and I'm not even talking to them. So that is not spending time with your family. Like I know people who maybe spend 2 hours with their family, but they are full focused in, and they are trying to make the most out of those 2 hours a day,
Mhm.
and then they go and kill it through their work,
Yeah, I
and
think
do whatever it takes.
I think that is sort of a misnomer as well, which is that I think a lot of people say like it's an either or. I don't think it's an either or. I think you just have to be very honest with your family or with your wife or with your girlfriend about what your goals are and what you want to achieve. And if that person is not going to help complement those goals, then you need to reevaluate what that relationship is going to be. When I was young, I had a lot of friends who made a lot of decisions based off of people that were in their lives that are not in their lives anymore. And when you're young, when you're in your 20s, you got to be selfish. You have to do things for your future that you have to be willing to make some sacrifices. And I'm not saying you have to be a bad person or be mean to people, but there's when you are eventually in a relationship or family environment, you got to make sure you're bringing something to the table. And I always love that I can go out and have this crazy week and achieve these things and then come back and tell my wife about them, and we can share those together. But I could not have married someone that needs me by her side every second of every day. If to me, that's a huge insecurity. And to me, that's something that I can't deal with because I need to be able to maybe go to work at 10 p.m. at night. I need to be able to, on a Sunday night, go to the Punchline in San Francisco and sit and wait and see if I can catch a set. These are things that are my passions, and I need someone in my life that will complement those. I can't have someone in my life tell me, well, that's not the way it's supposed to go, because the way it's supposed to go is not real. You know, I do work when most people sleep. That's not real. That's not, but I do it. So who's to say what's supposed to happen? But yeah, I see for a lot of young people out there, I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with the word selfish. I think don't confuse the word selfish with the word cruel or amoral or any of those things. Don't be mean, but when someone says, hey, I need you to do this thing, and you're like, oh, I have this opportunity to go do this other cool thing that I love and I'm passionate about, don't feel bad picking that thing. It's not their life, it's your life. So you got to be a little tough and a little stern with people sometimes, and eventually you'll find people that respect that, and then eventually you'll find people that compliment that, and that's great.
Yes, I definitely agree with you. This is Tim Ferriss' question that I'm about to do. How has a failure or apparent failure, say, set you up for later success in your life? And do you have a favorite failure, let's say?
A favorite failure? Yeah. Yeah. I would say, well, let's take the animated show that we did as an example. Originally, we wanted to roll that out. We funded it via Patreon, and we got a lot of really great energy and a lot of money from the fans to go make this series a reality. But I bit off way more than I could chew, and that was my naivete of not knowing how the animated process worked. I thought we could legitimately turn around 4 to 5 minutes of hand-drawn animation every month with one artist. And that was my failure as a producer and as a writer and as a person who was basically a showrunner on this project. to understand that was never going to be a goal that we could hit. That's just not a feasible possibility. So, what I think sometimes you need occasionally something that's going to shake you and go, you need to start fighting from your back now, right? You're in a bad spot and you need to troubleshoot how to get out of this and how to turn it around, because you have an audience of people that prepaid for this thing. Like, they funded it. So you have to give it to them, and it better be good, or as good as you know how to make it. And then you start getting behind on it and you're like, oh no, this is like, you feel like you're failing people. But I think the thing I learned from that is you don't get to just go to bed. Even when you're failing, you still got to go and find a way to succeed. And that's just, to me, is very much, that's a very macro level thing for what I deal with on a micro level every day, which is there's always going to be complications. It's production. All of production is creative problem solving. That's all it is. There's always going to be like, if you think about it, the first problem in any production is, what's the story going to be about? Okay, cool. Well, who are these characters? Oh, that's a problem. Shit. Okay, we got to ask some characters, right? Or how do we get this animated? I guess I should find some animators. Like, these are all just problem solution. But I think it's fun for every once in a while, or at least it's valuable every once in a while, for someone to have a project they really care about go south, and then you have to dig yourself out of that, because it makes you learn so much in those moments. You don't really learn a lot from success. You learn from failure and you apply that to success. But you don't learn, like, if everything just goes right, you don't learn anything. If I walked out of the house today and every time I told a joke to people, they laughed so hard they peed themselves, I wouldn't have to I'm done. I'm good. I don't have to learn anything. So I guess I just learned to embrace that failure and take that and help that guide what we do in the business going forward. So now we do simpler productions, and we will eventually ramp back up to a point where we do more complex things, but that's when we have slightly more resources and a little bit more time, and they have to be super passionate. Like, we just recently did a documentary about my stand-up comedy career, and I was able to apply a lot of those lessons to that, and it turned out really, really well. But I think it was because I know now to manage my own expectations and the production's expectations and pitch a very clear, concise story that I know we can tell in the time allotted with the resources allotted. And nothing's ever 100%, but we nailed it on this one. We really got this one.
Also, something you mentioned before, it brought to my head a question, then I forgot it and just remember it again. You mentioned about taking the path of least resistance. Probably you have met some people, as I have, that they start doing something, and I see two patterns here. One is that maybe they have let's call it an unfair advantage into something, and they don't want to use it because they feel that it's like cheating or something like that. Yes. And there is other people who maybe they have like this, as you say, this idea of how it should look in their head, and they are trying to make that happen, even though maybe life or the evidence that they are getting is showing them, hey, you can do this in this way, and it's going to be faster and easier, and you should consider this. And they are not wanting to take it because, again, maybe the frame of, oh, but that's cheating or something like that. I don't know. What would be your advice to for these people who want to, maybe they are perfectionists or whatever, but they are making things harder than they should, because, again, like, creative endeavor is hard by itself, and I think we both agree that it makes no sense making it harder than it should be. But there are some people out there maybe suffering this kind of misalignment in their mind. What would be your advice to them?
I mean, there's two parts there. One is, if you have advantages, should you take those? I think the answer is yes. I think the answer is yes, as long as you are still true to the process, right? So, for example, I could go out once every 3 months and promote the hell out of a stand-up comedy showcase and get probably a fairly good amount of people out, and I could go do comedy there, and then I could call myself a stand-up. That's not stand-up comedy. Stand-up comedy is doing it every night, doing it at clubs, doing it in front of people who don't know who you are, and being able to make them laugh. That, to me, is the process that I wanted to be true to. So I will, and I do leverage my audience to occasionally come out and support us. But overall, I also do want to build out from the ground up. So I am taking a slightly harder road to do it, but with the eye that the notion is, if I can succeed in this 5 years from now, I will be a lot stronger than if I had cheated myself this process. And honestly, the idea behind being a stand-up is you do have to get out there and write and practice every day. You get better at it. If I did it once every 3 months, I would probably suck at it. Yeah, I could put in my bio that I'm a stand-up comedian, but if you came and saw me, you'd be like, he was not very good. And so, you know, there's a lot of people on YouTube that put filmmaker in their bio, and some of them don't warrant it, and some of them do. And you know when you are putting something in your bio to fake it until you make it or not. But don't be the guy that fakes it until he makes it. Be the guy that's biting off a little more than they can chew and then figures out how to make it work. I think for a lot of people too, a lot of creative people, one of the things that, another piece of advice that I read a long time ago, I think it was in the producer's handbook, or the producer's guide, I forget what the book was called, but they talked about making the foot fit the shoe. And I thought that was such a perfect way of describing a project, the kind of project that you should always be working on, which is that pretend like your production, like you have to have some level of end goal and you have to have constraints. And then you scale the project to those constraints. Because if you don't do that, it will be an endless loop of let's add more and more and more, and it'll never get done. You have to have a shoe, and then you got to make the foot fit the shoe. And I think that's just so important. Like, and the best way to do that is to have a timeline. Are you making a short film? Great. Here's what you do. Pick a film festival that you want to submit that to. That's 2 months from now, and that's what you're submitting it to. And don't let yourself not hit that goal. And then if, oh, by the way, my film that I need for this festival requires me to have snow, but I live in Southern California where there is no snow. Well, guess what? Don't write a film about snow then. You see what I'm saying? Like, you can't let yourself, it's almost like you got to trick yourself and go, I'm just going to put the end goal out there. Like when I wanted to do comedy, one of the tools that I utilized was I told the audience I was going to do comedy. I didn't have a plan in place for that, but then it was an, oh shit, I got to go do this thing. You know, and one of the things that I'm thinking about doing right now is doing a jiu-jitsu tournament, my first ever like real tournament, and it scares the shit out of me. But there's a possibility I might just sign up for one and then go, fuck, I got to just scale my training accordingly so that I know I hit this deadline. So I think that's really, really important. But when it comes to creative endeavors, you got to know when you're just, when you are treading water with projects. And you really have to strip everything back to the simplest possible version of what it is you're trying to do in order to achieve it. You owe yourself that. If there's something that you think is going to take a week to shoot, how do you shoot it in 30 minutes? Is there an answer there? That's the way you can be more economical with your projects and get them done. Because let me tell you, I've been a part of plenty of projects that were some of the best projects you'll never see because they never got done. Because someone was way too ambitious and they burned out. And if it's just you, I know one person that I can think of off the top of my brain that legitimately did everything for one of his projects. And he's the guy that made Axiom Verge, and it took him years. And you are not that person. I guarantee if you're listening to this, you don't have that kind of wherewithal. So what can you do right now that, okay, if this is going to take a month, cool. What can you do today? What can you do in the next hour? What can you do on your iPhone that gets you some level of whatever that is that you can put out to your audience right now? Because putting something out is always going to be better than waiting forever and never getting it out to market.
Yes.
Very long-winded answer. Sorry about that.
No problem. It was a really great one. There was this question from Peter Thiel, one of the guys who founded PayPal.
Yeah.
And he has this thing, Tim Ferriss mentioned it as well, like, if you have this goal, this 10-year goal, how can you make it happen in 6 months?
I love that. I love that mentality.
And yeah, it's like, it's not a question that you should be able to answer right away. And if you do, then you're definitely lying to yourself.
Well, yeah. If you can answer it, oh, I can do it easily in 6 months, then the question is, how can you do it in 6 days? That's the real question. But I love that because what I have seen in myself is I put goals on the table that are so lofty that I'll never be able to achieve them. And what that does for me is it means that I'll never actually have to try. Because if I never try, I'll never fail. That is a self-defense mechanism that all of us have pre-programmed into our brains. Don't do that thing. If you do that thing, that might lead to hurt, and hurt is bad. So do whatever it is to make sure you don't ever have to do that thing. And I think one of the things people do is they go, I want to make an Academy Award-winning film tomorrow. Okay. That's probably not going to happen. So you're probably never really going to actually do that. What if your goal was just to make a fucking killer 10-second short and using only your iPhone? Okay, cool. What if it was to do 10 seconds of video every day for a week? That's achievable. These are all achievable goals. And that way, if you don't do it, you can, that's one of the tools that I use also, is where's the long-term goal? If I'm not doing something that I want to do, I ask myself, why is that? Is it too complicated? Is it too complex? Do I really want to do it? And if I really do want to do it, then I start breaking it down to its individual components of what is the thing that I can do to start achieving that thing right now. With stand-up, it was, take my computer out of my bag. That was step one. That was all I did the first time. Step two, open the computer, open up Google. Step three, Google Open Mics San Francisco. And those little tiny steps were, they kept the fear from creeping in and telling me, like, don't do this thing. And it kept the excitement going of, oh, well, tonight all I'm going to do is just research open mics. That's cool. I don't have to go to one of them. I don't have to go up. I don't have to have material. I'll just have some fun looking at them. And then the next week, I went to one. Didn't go up. Just wanted to go to one. My goal was to just go have a cup of coffee, listen to some comics, and see what the scene was like. And I did that a few more times before I got up the nerve to actually put my name on the list. That is a great way to do things. Because when you break it down to the lowest possible element that you could do to succeed, you can't possibly fail. You can't let yourself fail. You know, I think you just can't make it so monumentally hard that you're never going to ever be possible. It's not going to be possible to achieve it.
Yeah, there is this book that is called Flow, and it says there is based on this study, but they found that the best thing to do for people who are creative is trying to find this goal that when you hear it is you feel that it's kind of outside your reach, but at the same time kind of in your reach as well. That is something that you can do, but at the same time it feels a little bit harder, and that you should be always striving to that point.
Because if you don't, you will eventually start getting complacent and depressed. If you are, that's why you see a lot of like people, you hear the old, like the trope of, you know, rich kids who have problems and are super depressed because they don't have to, they never have to achieve anything. Human beings thrive with challenge. We like to have obstacles in front of us that are just hard enough to overcome, that we have to learn something. And then when we overcome them, we feel a sense of accomplishment. That is why video games are so popular. That is the science behind video games. If you're playing a game right now and you're bored with it or it sucks, ask yourself why. Is it because it's not challenging enough? Is it too challenging? Is it just a little too far off from you where you're not getting that balance that you're talking about? And I think that's very much what you need for the creative process. Is if I were to put it on myself that I need to make an Academy Award-winning movie by next week, I'm gonna fail because that's too far out of my reach, right? If I said to myself, I'm just gonna go do, you know, I'm gonna try to book 2 more comedy sets next week, that's doable for me at this point. But it wasn't 2 years ago. That would have been way out of my reach. And I like to break it down to, when I'm trying to accomplish something, how exciting is it versus scary, you know? And if it's 51% exciting and 49% scary, that's perfect. That means that I'm a little bit more excited than I am intimidated by it, which means it's just out of my, like, that's right there on the tip. Sometimes it's 49, 51, whatever, somewhere in that balance. But if something's like 100% scary to me, and I'm excited about it like 1%, but it's 99% scary, then I'm not going to achieve it. I got to break it down to something a little easier to achieve, you know? Because otherwise you're just not going to do it. You're not going to do it.
Yeah, there was a point a couple of years ago when I kind of tuned that into that you just mentioned, that it pretty much once I felt that kind of fear, it was like, oh, fuck it. Now I got to do it.
Yeah.
Oh, shit. and that was it. But it took me a while. It took me a couple of years to get to that point. but it was kind of a weird point.
I'm willing to bet, and there's always a let's jump off, sink or swim point, but I'm willing to bet if you looked back at that process, you would see yourself incrementally approaching that goal. You would see yourself incrementally building the confidence and the tools and the knowledge you needed to then hit that point and go, fuck it, let's do it, right? With Kind of Funny, it was the exact same way. It was a year and a half before we decided to leave. And that took us launching a Patreon, doing a podcast, getting the website up, all these things that I didn't think we could do, that if I had to do all of them again tomorrow, brand new, I would not be able to do. It would be too daunting. But we just found the next challenge, and it scared us a little bit, but together we all went out and did it. And then we found the next challenge, and then the next one, and the next one. And then that's how you build a career. And that's why they call it building a career. They don't call it finding a career. You know, you don't go out there and like stumble into a career. You build a career. And how do you build anything? Solid foundation, first story, second story, third story, then you have a skyscraper eventually. And that's how everyone does it. And you know, the more time you spend on those, the more time you spend really kind of appreciating that, the better your career will be built, and the more solid the foundation will be. You know, like there are probably a lot of guys out there that can go and do the one-off cool animation that gets a little notoriety, but they don't have a solid base for that, and they don't have the ability to do it again. You know, and it's not marketable at that point. With Kind of Funny, you talk about the animated series, that we bit off a lot there. And what we've learned since is that we needed to scale back a little bit and really focus on the fundamentals of what our business is, which is podcasts, live streams, some live appearances, and being overall personalities. And now we've started to really build that foundation over the last couple of years, that I think we can start adding a slightly higher level of production to that, and then work our way back up to something like the animated show one day.
And on that topic, I'm going to ask you, this is, I think, the hardest question that I usually ask the people I interview. Let's say you wake up tomorrow in a different dimension. Nobody knows about you. Pretty much you have lost everything except your knowledge. You still have your knowledge. You still have your experience. And you have $500 in your wallet. What will you do to get up in this path as soon as possible?
That's a hard question, because there's a few different things that you need for success, especially for what I do, right? Which you need motivation, you need the time, and then you also need what I like call the X factor. And the X factor who the hell knows what that's going to be. Sometimes you don't know what that's going to be until it hits you in the face. For me, the X factor was IGN. I didn't know that was going to come around, and once it did, I was like, this is life changing. You know, and then in a lot of ways, obviously the life that I live right now is very much because I was around 3 other people that wanted to go take a chance with me, and that was a huge X factor for me. I hear this a lot from a lot of comedians. They're like, how do I get more followers? How do I do this thing? And I'm like, I being funny, being creative, grinding is not necessarily enough. You do have to look out for those opportunities as they come around you. So I would, given my tools that I have right now, I would obviously immediately start producing videos. But I would do it with the mentality of, how can I get on somebody else's radar that can help amplify me, and then put me and get me a bigger following, so that I can then keep that snowball effect going, if that makes sense. I don't know necessarily that IGN is the place, but knowing what I know now, I would probably be like, how can I use that $500 to start creating videos that would get me seen by like a Rooster Teeth? And once I'm through there, that's a place where you can go and then build another following, and maybe even do creative productions that will allow me to be doing what I'm doing here, but for them. And then I would probably try to work out a deal where I could continue to do all my stuff on the side and build that up.
Yeah, for me, my X factor was pretty much the interview with Fred Seibert.
Mm-hmm.
When I look back at that point, that was like a huge pivotal moment. and it's still taking, let's say, it still has effects to what we're doing now. Because, again, like, I didn't knew who he was, and then I was having this interview with him, and then thanks to that interview, I started getting more and more people, and I found out about that he had like this incubator for animators, the Channel Federator Network. I got in and started getting all these resources about YouTube and how to do things, and pretty much started implementing that. And 1 year later, we started showing our animations and things like that to the people there, and people were impressed. And 1 year later, one of the team of Federator came to us, and he was like, "Hey, are you open for commercial animations and doing animation?" It was like, "Yes. I have a project. Somebody's looking for animators to help him create a series, and that was you." And that was Kate introducing us. And
that's right.
And from there, it's like, if I started explaining that all the things that started happening from that point, I will never end.
That's great, and I'm so happy for you guys that's the way that worked out. And obviously, you guys, you're very talented, and you're very professional, and you come through for your clients, which I think is very, very important. It's not enough. That's I think a hard thing too for a lot of artists, is that I can't tell you how many people I've worked with that I'm like, you do such great work, but you can't deliver on time. You can't deliver for what the client wants, and you're never gonna be able to enjoy success that way, because you've got to be able to you have to be able to be professional on that level. But what I like to tell people, especially because I get this question a lot from people, like, hey, how do I get my start in the industry? How do I get to a point where I'm like enjoying some of the stuff that you guys got going on? And I don't necessarily have an answer, because everyone's path is different. What I do know is the one common denominator I've seen for people is that they just put out creative stuff on a consistent basis, and good things come at some point. I couldn't tell you how it was going to come for you, but I for sure could have said, if you don't do anything, then for sure nothing will happen, right? There's no talent bureau in the United States that goes, I heard that guy Nick talking at a Starbucks, and he's pretty funny. Let's bring him up and let's train him. No. That don't work that way. What it does is you just put stuff out and you follow your passion and you make awesome content, and then maybe that attracts the person who's going to put you in contact with a person that might give you a reference to Bernie over at Rooster Teeth, or people over at IGN, or someone that might get you on a radar, and then all of a sudden you're getting that contract work, or you're becoming, before you know it, you turn around and you go, someone's paying me to do this. That's weird. Like, I'll never forget the first time someone paid me to film something. I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, it's almost like the first time someone gave me $10 to do comedy. I was like, huh. And if I turn around, if my goals align, with what I want them to be, I'll turn around one day and someone will pay me more than that to do comedy. And that's huge. But that all started someplace, and it all started by just putting out, I don't believe there's such a thing as wasted creativity. I just don't believe that. I think if you put a YouTube video out and one person watches it, that's one more person that saw your work that didn't see it before. Maybe it's your mom. Who knows? But maybe your mom refers it to someone who refers it to someone, and it snowballs. And for sure, if you put that energy out, it will come back to you eventually. I couldn't tell you how, but it will.
Yes, and what you just mentioned, that is so true. That what you just say, that people who have amazing talent but they lack the professional area. We have dealt a lot with that as well. We hire people who had an amazing talent. There is no other way to put it. Like, they just had an amazing talent, but they just never delivered on time. Or there were some people who they were aware who had this talent, and they had an ego around it. So when you ask, they did something and you ask for a change, they will get mad because they consider their piece perfect, and now that you're trying to change it. And if this is like the biggest constant that I have found through doing all these interviews, whenever I ask this question to anybody who has to hire people, they will say that they will never focus on talent, on raw talent alone, because they have gone through the lesson, like, oh, this is an incredible, amazing talent, and they put it in, and it's just a mess in the team. And it's like, okay, it's animation, it's production, this is a team play.
Oh, absolutely. And there's, you can't, like, that is something that you learn, and hopefully you learn very quickly, which is I would rather sacrifice like having a superstar. Like if I were to coach a baseball team or a football, I mean, I'm going to slaughter this because I don't know anything about sports. I don't know why I'm giving you a sports analogy, but let's take basketball. You know, I wouldn't want one superstar. I would want, you know, a bunch of guys that are just really good at working together, because that's the team I'd want to play on. And that's what I look forward to when I put together creative people as well, which is, you know, if I was going to shoot a movie, yeah, I'd love to get Roger Deakins to shoot it for me. But I know he's going to do really good cinematography and deliver on time, because that's Roger Deakins. You know, I'd rather not take a chance on the guy from YouTube that's really, really good but won't answer my fucking emails. You know what I mean? Like, you have to have a blend of being able to do beautiful work, but on the time frame that is necessary for the production. If you can't do that, that's a skill you need to start really honing. Otherwise, you're going to be that guy that makes excuses for why every producer sucks to work with, and this client was terrible because they wanted all these things, and like, it's not my fault, it's their fault. No, motherfucker, it's your fault because you're not managing your client's expectations, because you don't have that skill yet. You're not making that foot fit that shoe. If you can't be that person, then you're not really of use to any clients. Any paying people who are going to say, hey, I want you to do this 30-second commercial animation for me because I got a campaign that's rolling out in a month. Well, that's useless to them if you get it to them 8 months from now, you know? And they're probably not going to want to pay you because you're in breach of what the contract is. So, you know, I appreciate that there are people out there that, but, you know, the guys that I look up to are like the guys like the Wes Andersons, right? That do amazing work, still manage to make a commercial product, and they do it seemingly on time, and that's and you know, they somehow manage to broach that triangle of cheap, fast, and good, and they can do all three somehow, and it's really cool.
Yeah, and when you just say that there are people who blame about how is everybody else's fault. Something that I discovered is that the creative industry, especially in my country, is like really, really small, and if you get a bad reputation with 3 key people, then you're done. And I know a couple of people who had to change careers entirely because pretty much they burn all the opportunities by osmosis, let's say, because I heard the tale of this other guy and this other guy and this other guy. So there's 3 people here that is not a coincidence, that is not something that bad luck happened to 2 people, I can believe. 3, not so much. And at that point, like, everybody's like, no, I'm not taking my chance with this guy, and they have to change entirely careers. Even worldwide is very small.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, you guys are obviously awesome, and I'd recommend you to anyone because you came through for me. It doesn't matter where you're located in the world; people are going to know who you are, because whenever anyone wants animation, I've had numerous people go, "Who did your thing?" I was like, "Oh, it's Framework. They're great. You should work with them." I stand by these guys; they get my stamp of approval. What you have to realize is, as an artist, and I don't want to boil it down to this because it's a different process and a lot of people can't understand it, but you are coming in as a specialized high-end tool for a production. And very similar to if you were to need a high-end sports car, you need to make sure you are running perfectly and giving the client the exact experience that they're expecting. And when things go wrong, you have to help them solve that problem. You can't be another stumbling block in their way. The second you go from being, hey, this is a tool that can help me solve this overall problem of this production that we have, to being, this is yet another thing I have to manage, and a challenge point, and a person who's just going to fucking not get back to me, or someone who's going to tell me that their work's perfect when I'm the person paying them and want it changed. If you're going to sit there and argue with me, you're not probably going to be my first call the next time. And I have plenty of people I've worked with in the past that are now numbers 5, 6 on my call list of people that I need, because they're just difficult and they just nickel and dime me or give me shit at every point. And I'm like, I just don't want to work with you, because at a certain point you're not fun to work with. And I didn't get into production to not have fun. You know, I don't want to be a producer and a director and a writer to work with people who are going to be atrocious all the time. That's not the point of this. No kid envisioned wanting to be draw cartoons because he thought it was going to be laborious. You know, you think it's gonna be fun. You're like, let's go have fun. Let's go work around people that are more talented than us in different areas, and they can bring their disciplines in and sound design and all sorts of cool stuff and make this cool project that I could never do by myself.
Yes. There is this interview with Mark Caballero that I had. He told me exactly the same thing. Like, look, if you're not having fun doing this thing, you're doing it wrong. and yeah, I with the time I have met people working in Disney who I see their portfolios, and even though they are good, because obviously you don't get into Disney without being good, right? Or Pixar or whatever, they're good, but I know other people who have better portfolio than them, but they are not working in Disney or Pixar because they are lacking this other kind of thing, and they think that by talent alone, and maybe if I just get even better, I will get higher. It's like no, there is, and this is something in psychology that has been studied as well, that the morality that it takes place into a one game is way different than the morality that you take into consideration when you're playing the same game over and over and over again with the same people. And as you mentioned, like if you get one person that is horrible to work with in a team, maybe you can take his shit through one game, but the second game is like, oh, okay, you're doing that again, and the third one is like, yeah, I'm not liking this thing. And first of all, if you act this way, people are not going to want to play with you. That applies for pretty much everything in society. And second, like, yeah, you have to make yourself to put yourself into a position that everybody just likes working with you, and that's the people that is going to be hired. Like, and I hear it over and over again. Is in recording in my interviews. Like, even Oscar winners say, like, yeah, you know what? I will take like a decent talent, but with the right attitude, and I will gladly spend years training this guy to become better than to deal 3 days with a great talent with a shitty attitude. Like,
and you know what?
No.
I 100% agree. I had a screenwriting professor of mine tell me, like, the old saying that she kind of lived by, that I guess a lot of people in Hollywood used to say or still say, which is show up on time and be fun to work with. Those are the only two things you really got to do to make sure you're going to get hired back, which is just fucking be cool. You know, I just read an article with written about Chevy Chase in the Washington Post. I don't know if you're familiar with Chevy Chase or not. Obviously one of the, started Saturday Night Live and is one of the most famous comedic actors in the 80s and 90s. But he dropped off. And the reason he dropped off was because he's very hard to work with. And this guy was a huge talent, but at a certain point, even Lorne Michaels, the guy who was, the creator of Saturday Night Live, when Chevy wanted to come back and guest host, even he was like, you know what? I know it'd be huge for ratings, but I don't want to put my people through dealing with you. And like, that's a lot of money he could have made by bringing Chevy Chase back. And he just didn't want to do it because he just doesn't want the people that he's grooming as talent to have to deal with that fucking asshole ego and be put in that terrible situation when he could just keep getting the same level of work out of them, if not a little bit better every single time, and let them be the ones who are the stars. And I think that's what you see. I think you see that a lot in Hollywood. I think you see a lot of people who continue to have great careers because they are easy to work with. One of the guys that I know kind of anecdotally through a friend is a guy named Brandon Trost, and he's a director of photography in Hollywood. He started off working, just on doing smaller projects and just, wasn't specifically the best DP you've ever seen. I think one of his first movies was Rob Zombie's House of a Thousand Corpses. Not a great, well-shot movie, but that got him the next movie. That got him the sequel to Ghost Rider, which was a little bit better than the first one. And then he got hooked up with Seth Rogen's people, and now he shoots every single Seth Rogen movie. And he's in the studio system, and his talent has gotten to the point where he's a great DP, especially for rom-coms, which are a very straightforward shot. And he works all the time. He's booked all the time. And it's just because he shows up And you know, I've never spoken with him. My friend tells me the things that he says, so I don't want to put words in his mouth. But his approach is, I'm here to help you make your vision. I'm going to show up, and if you say we need to get the shot set in 5 minutes, it's going to be set in 5 minutes. That's going to be the way it's going to go, because that's what we need to do. And like, if you can be that person and still love, you know, be able to infuse your art and your creativity into something, then you're going to go far. You really are. But you can't be that person that's going to be like, oh, a 12-hour production day, that's ridiculous. Well, that's production. So maybe you don't belong in production. Maybe you need to go draw greeting cards.
Yes, definitely. Changing topics, there is a question that I wanted to ask you. Whenever you feel overwhelmed or like burnout, what do you do to pick yourself over again and pretty much put yourself again into the mood or the mindset to keep working and pretty much recover?
Yeah, I mean, recovery is definitely a skill, and it's something that I didn't come to till way later in life. And so if you'd asked me 3 years ago, I would have said, well, the way I would do it is I would yell at someone who was very close to me, probably hurt their feelings, and then apologize, and then go get a lot of sleep, and then go get a workout and make sure I'm eating healthfully, and then I'm taking a couple days to just sit at a Starbucks and look on the internet and zone out and just relax, or maybe get a massage. Now I do pretty much all those things except for the first part where I rage against people, because I realize that, you know, I'm very acutely aware of when I'm burned out and when I'm hitting a point where I'm being like, when I'm tired and I'm being mean to people and I'm just not being the person that I want to be. And so ultimately I will force myself to take a day off. I will force myself to take I also know enough about myself and my schedule now to be able to identify that ahead of time. So for instance, Wednesdays and Saturday nights tend to be the days that I keep open to, maybe if something pops up, I'll go do it. But those are the days that I know that I'm like, okay, my Sunday, Monday, Tuesday is really brutal. Like this week was Sunday night was comedy. Sunday was a barbecue with comedians. Sunday night was comedy. Monday night was jiu-jitsu, then comedy. Tuesday was jiu-jitsu, then comedy. So I knew that going into that schedule, Wednesday needed just to be go home, cook myself a good meal, kick my feet up, hang out with my wife, and watch the Great British Bake Off, which is a guilty pleasure of mine. And so you got to dial in those days that you can just power down and recharge, and you got to get great sleep. That's the other thing that I tell people is you sleep is probably the single most important thing for your creative brain. I honestly believe that, and it's always the first thing that people sacrifice during a project, always. And I didn't start really getting great seeing progress in comedy until I started recognizing that I needed to take a day off here and there, because my brain physically works better when I'm well rested. And if my brain works better, then the words come out better. And if the words come out better, people laugh. You know, if my brain works better on a podcast, then I can have a conversation for an hour and 43 minutes and have it fly by like that and explore these ideas with you and just be enjoyable to be around and hopefully good to listen to and just have a great time. Because if I'm having a great time, then hopefully people that are listening to this are having a great time too. So there's lots of things that like you need to go into the machine that is Nick Scarpino. Sleep is one of them. Good nutrition is one of them. Getting workouts every once in a while, and then really powering down and spending real quality time with my family and with my wife. Really just turn the TV off, face each other, and talk. That's huge, and you need that every once in a while.
Yes, definitely. Many of those things are I've come in the last 2 years, I think, to realize the importance of that. Before, maybe a couple of years ago, I would say, yeah, sleep is important, and it should be as important as the work, and rest and recovery should be as important as work. But I was saying that because logically I knew it, but at the same time it didn't have a click inside. There was something in me that was saying, no, like you can still work it out. Right now, I think many things have clicked out. For example, I'm starting to eat healthier now, and before it was kind of a battle with myself because I want the sugary thing and and the other thing.
Still have that problem.
But now it's like more like just letting go, and it's like, oh yeah, I don't crave it anymore, so I think meditation and trying to find these places where I can just kind of tune in, as you say. Like, I've been trying to go out with friends more planned. Like, okay, I
Mhm.
have to have this time in the week with the people that I'm closest with, and have a good quality time with them. Not checking my phone, not nothing, like just being there, and I think that's starting to improve a lot of things, slowly but definitely surely. And sleep, I'm still trying to fix that up. It's still not working that well, but it's definitely much better than it was.
Yeah, I mean, everything's a process. And again, I don't live this perfect life, right? Like last night, I was up till 2 in the morning because I just had anxiety and I just couldn't get to bed. And so today I felt sluggish, and that's just the way it goes. And I think for me, I try to trick myself. If I'm having anxiety about something, then I'll go do a workout, or I'll go do jujitsu, and I'll go do something where it's physically impossible for me to think of anything else but the task at hand. What's one of the reasons why I love jujitsu is because you literally can't think of anything else if someone's trying to strangle you. It's not possible. It's just not. It is the most present you will ever be in your life when there is another human being who's bigger than you threatening violence against you. And not, obviously, we're not doing violence against each other. I shouldn't say that. I feel bad for saying that. But when someone's trying to execute a technique against you that could cause you a little bit of pain and discomfort, your body goes, I have to focus on this. And it releases hormones, and it releases adrenaline, and it releases all these things that, actually, I think adrenaline's a hormone. It releases all these chemicals in your body that when you're done with it, you just go, and you sleep like a baby, because no matter what you got the next day, it's not someone trying to strangle you. It's just not. You know, it puts everything in perspective. Like, no matter how hard my production day is tomorrow, if I got 2 shows at night and I got to make it through 12 days, at least I fended off someone trying to strangle me today. That's the most important thing. Or at least I got through that.
Yes, in my case, it was boxing, the one that made me relax.
Box is
And
great.
I tried jiu-jitsu, but the part when somebody strangled you, it was pretty much the first they made me, like they grabbed me and put me in a weird position and pretty much felt horrible. I pretty much got cramp in my body because I was not expecting that position.
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay, I'm not ready for this yet, so let's keep boxing. But again, like when you're there in the in pretty much in a cage, and you have to be there for the split second to try to block the hit, or get hit in the face, or try to avoid it. There was this guy who was even bigger than me again, and he was like way stronger. When I was they put me with him because I was the second biggest guy in the gym. So I was trying to hold his kicks with a cushion or something, and every time he kicked me, like pretty much my legs went flying a little bit. And when we had to do sparring, he pretty much gave me a hit in the head that I felt all my neck cracking.
Yeah.
And then felt like weird, and tried to move it into the right position, and then it cracked again, like completely. And it was like, okay, this is in what I was expecting, but I still kept sparring. And yeah, definitely when that happens, like, funny enough, is again like 2 days of that, and no matter how stressed I am, like 2 days at most, and I'm relaxed.
It's just not, you got to have something that'll get you out of your head and into your body a little bit. That's a term that Joe Rogan says a lot, and I was like, that's a smart idea, because when you let all those fears and anxieties circle on your head too much, and it keeps you up at night, and then you start getting stomach issues, or you can't eat, or you're eating too much, or you're just looking for some sort of release. I'm guilty of it as well, where when I have crazy anxiety, my first thing I reach for is food, bad food. I want snack food, man. I want Oreo cookies. I want goldfish. And so it's nice to have a couple days built in where I know that I'm going to get a release with that. But I'm right there with you, by the way. I still get super claustrophobic when it comes to jiu-jitsu. Like, if I get put in really bad spots, I got to tap and take a break. But But believe it or not, that's actually the point. The point of doing jiu-jitsu is that it tests your mental ability to deal with stuff on a near daily basis. If you train every day, you're going to be put someplace where you go, I might freak out right now. I don't like this. But if you can push through that, or if you can kind of deal with it, or that makes you so much more mentally prepared to deal with the levels of production that you might face in any project, right? It's a similar kind of experience when you think something's done and then the client gets back to you and goes, oh, I just have a few more notes. And you look at those notes, you're like, that's 2 days worth of work. Shit. You got to be prepared for that. And I think one of the ways you do that is by doing something that's a little harder, like a martial art or kickboxing. Obviously, if you're getting kicked in the face, not great. You should probably back off that and be like, hey, maybe don't kick me in the face. It's my first couple fucking days, asshole. And in my gym with jiu-jitsu, you're not really encouraged to actively spar until you've had quite a few classes under your belt of fundamentals, so you can understand, yeah, you don't know how to get out of this position, but that's not because you can't get out of the position. It's because you don't know how to get out of the position, or you're not good at it, or the person that's holding you there is so good at what they're doing that you got to just relax because there's no way out. Like, there are a lot of like purple and brown belts that just can do stuff to me that I'm just like, I can't. Even if I knew what I was doing, I couldn't do shit right now because they're just really good at it. But that's a metaphor for life. That's what I loved so much about jiu-jitsu, is that you have to get comfortable. You have to practice being comfortable, being uncomfortable. And that is production in a nutshell. You have to wrap your head around the fact that you're going into a production where anything might happen. And that's a very uncomfortable position to be in. You have to thrive in that position. You have to thrive in the position of the unknown is going to happen all the time. And you just have to be like, I got to trust that the people around me and my artistic abilities will get us through this and get us to the other end with something awesome. And that's the same with jiu-jitsu. I trust every day I go in that I'm going to get to the end of the class. I'm not going to die. Nothing's going to happen, but I might freak out a little bit, or I might have some anxiety, or I might get some pain, but I'll live. It's going to be fine. And when I get out of it, every single time I feel fantastic.
Yes, that definitely resumes it. I would like to ask you, do you know about opportunities or resources that people starting out can use that might not be aware that they exist, like scholarships, courses online, things like that? Or
well, I mean, for one, if you're trying to use raw skills, there's a website called youtube.com that is fantastic. Now, I say that because I feel like people don't pay enough credence to it. When I was trying to learn how to cut in Final Cut back in the day, and then again in Premiere, and use the Adobe suite like Photoshop and Illustrator and After Effects, I was a huge After Effects fan because I loved the concept of motion graphics. But this is like 2001, 2002. There was no YouTube. We had creativecow.net, and then like maybe Video Copilot and some of these other resources where you had to like pay to get tutorials. So right now, the fact that if I don't know how to do something, I could just Google it real quick. It's so cool. So just start building that into your day. If you're trying to learn something like After Effects, right? If you're trying to build yourself as a motion graphics artist, there are a gazillion free tutorials out there that'll start acclimating you to that world, and you can start building on that very, very easily. Same with if you need to learn how to do anything in live motion. Do you know how many freaking tutorials there are out there on how to use a Canon C100, or any affordable prosumer level camera that gets you a decent image and some depth of field? They're all out there. So just don't hesitate. Just use those resources, and then eventually you'll start to figure out the guys that actually know what they're talking about from the people who just don't know shit and just decided to start a YouTube channel and do tutorial videos. And then, just go out there and do stuff. The best way to learn anything is to do. That is just especially for production. You want to make films, you want to get experience working with actors, you want to draw, you got to just do it. And you got to look at it and go, that was shit, that was shit, that was shit. That's not so shitty, With comedy, for instance, I record my sets and I go back and listen to them, and I get a lot from that. And it sucks. I hate doing it. In fact, I have 3 on my phone right now that I need to go back and listen to. But there are those tools out there for you right now. There's no excuses. YouTube is a huge resource. And then, the other thing I would say is try to find people a big resource that I think people don't really put into perspective is be a fan of things. Don't let other people's success or their talent intimidate you toward shying away from them. Lean into that. immerse yourself in their world, figure out what it is that they did to succeed, and try to mirror that process a little bit. If you can reach out and interview them, reach out and interview them. If you can help them in any creative way at all, make yourself a resource to them. Because having a mentor is probably one of the most powerful tools you can have. Someone who can help shepherd you through some of these processes and maybe point you toward the right challenges, so you're not stumbling on the wrong, like spending years stumbling in the wrong direction.
Yes. YouTube, I think as well, is like still underrated by many. They're receiving multimillionaires. They're giving their advice and their knowledge just because they want to provide some change to the world. Like, and to be honest, like even when I was starting, and again, like this was all this thing about online entrepreneurship was coming up. Even helped me out to find out people who also started from a very similar position than myself, like going from a very hard country like India in a poor place and starting from zero, and now they have millions of dollars and they are teaching all they know, or people who there is this guy, Derek Halpern, who even made his post about that he was growing up in a family where everybody was a drug addict and everybody was getting into jail, and he had to break from that in order to.
That is one of that's one of the most impressive things to me, right? Is that you see time and time again, some of the most creatively successful people come from these really, really, really like adverse backgrounds. And I think there's something that happens to people when they're hit with a level of adversity young, where they have to figure shit out. And most people, I think, it doesn't work out so well for them, but every once in a while you get superstars out of it. People who go, like someone says, you're never going to be shit, and then something clicks in their brain and they go, you know what, fuck you. I'm going to be everything. I'm going to use all of these, because believe it or not, you're actually, you know, if you grow up in a place, like I know plenty of people who've grown up in places where maybe the parenting environment wasn't the best and they had to really fend for themselves when they were young. But that's a tool that can actually be useful for you later in life, where if you're like, well, I guess I just got to figure stuff out at a young age, then suddenly you're real good at figuring shit out by the time you're 20. And by the way, the things that scare most normal people don't scare you, because you've already seen some shit. You've already seen life get a lot worse than most people around you, maybe in your school or in your college or whatever, are ever going to see. So fuck them. They don't really get it. You're tougher because you've already grown up in that environment, or you've grown up in a place that's maybe not ideal, and it's giving you a harder exterior, and you can use that to your advantage. You just got to be very careful that you don't dip into self-destructive tendencies like a lot of people do.
Yeah, definitely. Also, is there any advice that you would like to give to people starting out their creative careers that maybe we haven't talked into this interview?
Yeah. Have fun. That is so important. And I think that it's something that no one ever tells you to do, but like, just go have fun and do stuff. Pick something right now that just, maybe it's not even what you want to be doing, but what's like an idea right now if you're listening to this and you're like, you know what, I want to go do that thing. Maybe just go do it. Just go have fun. Because being, trying to set out into a creative endeavor is supposed to be fun. You're supposed to enjoy it. And you got to just try stuff and have fun and like not be afraid to fail. Because who cares? Who gives a shit? Nobody, believe it or not, is keeping track of anything. Nobody cares. I know that all of our lives are tracked now on Facebook and Instagram, and for the rest of our lives, everything we do is going to be written down in some ledger. But nobody's reading that ledger. Nobody cares. Just go have fun. Find things that you absolutely can't live without and indulge in them and try to make them your career.
Yeah, I saw this picture a couple of months ago, this meme, and it was an illustration, and it said, there is two attitudes that you can take out of life. And the first one was like a guy a little bit depressed saying like, oh, nobody cares. And the second was like the first one saying like, nobody gives a shit and all depressed. And the second one was an incredibly happy guy, like, nobody gives a shit.
They don't care. Don't break any rules. Don't break any laws. Rather, you can break rules, just don't break laws, and don't hurt anyone. That includes yourself. Beyond that, Man, I'll tell you, if I had it to do over again, or if I can go back and tell my 18-year-old self something, I'd be like, stop worrying about money. Just have a job that pays the bills and just go have fun for at least half your 20s. Just go experiment, go do things you want to do. Just make sure you're not doing what I did, which was, be lazy half the time. But go put yourself in situations that are just crazy. And like, if you're a comedian and you're living in LA, go to the Comedy Store tonight. Just go. You're listening to this right now. If you want to do stand up, go to a fucking club right now. Just go have a cocktail and see if you can see a show. Ask people if there's a mic. Go to these things. Just, you got 24 hours in a day, 8 of which you should probably sleep, 8 of which you got to eat. That leaves 8 for you to do whatever the fuck you want to do, and nobody gives a shit. So just go do it. Go have fun. Go do cool shit. If tonight you want to play a video game, play a video game. Cool. If you play a video game 80 nights out of the week, don't come to me and tell me that you're not achieving your goals because you're not trying. Go do fucking cool. Just go do cool shit.
Definitely.
Also, I would say another key thing, though, honestly, and the thing that's been probably one of the biggest influences, if not the most important factor in my success, is surround yourself with people who are also doing cool shit. If you put yourself in an environment where you're around killers, you will be a killer. That is just the way it goes. There's a reason why I love going and doing jiu-jitsu. It's because I admire the guys that are killers, and I want to be a killer. Metaphorically speaking, of course. I don't ever want to do harm to anyone, but I want to be around people who are so fucking good at something that it inspires me to do better every day. That's so important. I get that at Kind of Funny, which is great. Greg and Tim blow me out of the water all the time with their knowledge, their professionalism, their work ethic. It inspires me to work harder. And if you're just starting right now, find a group of people that are doing that and hold them to that expectation and come through for them. Just try.
Yes, that is definitely something incredibly true. That was one of the first lessons that I'm really glad that I got very early, that I had to find people who were doing the things that I wanted to do and way more. And even now, I try to study billionaires. I don't think I will become a billionaire ever, but at the same time, there is this principle that whatever help them get to that level will help you solve this problem that you have.
Well, let's back up for a second, because you could be a millionaire if you wanted to, but that's not your goal. Your goal is to be able to run a successful creative business and have that thrive and grow. And then maybe one day you might actually turn around and be like, fuck, I am a millionaire. You never know. The people that I know that are very successful are the ones that didn't give a shit about money. Honestly, they're the ones that just wanted to go out and do their own thing and follow their passion. And the money just comes. It just comes. If you're fucking phenomenal at something, you will get paid eventually for it, and you'll get paid a lot for it. If you're the best comedian working on the fucking planet and you're smart about how you put yourself out there, you'll eventually start making money. You will. It's just it will happen. It just might take 10 years.
Yes, and also the second advice I will give to young people is to, if possible, try to join, to volunteer to take care of elders, asylums and things like that, for 2 reasons. One will be to ask them about the things that they regret and the things that they think that matter, because one of the things that I see young people doing is that sometimes they drown themselves into things that they think that it matters the world. And now I can see it's like, oh shit, that was me a couple of years ago. Yeah. And now I can see that this thing that I was so worried about doesn't matter at all. And secondly, is because old people truly don't give a shit about anything. And if you can try to take the positive side out of that attitude and apply it to your life and then do whatever you want, getting that knowledge that will be like a huge limitation taken out of your shoulders.
It is, it is probably the thing that I try to focus on most every day of my life, is shedding that fear and those insecurities and just leaning heavily into the pure creative aspect of what we do. Because, you always do something, you always have a doubt in your brain about whether it's the right thing to do, the right way to go about it. But, you kind of have to try to train yourself to be fearless and just do stuff and just go do things. And, there will be consequences, and sometimes they're bad and sometimes they're good. But, again, if you're not breaking any laws or hurting anyone, they're not going to be severe. So just go out and try to be as fearless as you possibly can and respectful as you possibly can, and go make art.
Definitely. Then it's been 2 hours. I think this is the longest interview I had so far, but definitely I loved every minute of it. So thanks a lot for making a little bit time to be here and sharing your knowledge, Nick.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
And for people to find you, where will be the best place to find your work and the funny?
You can follow me on Twitter at Nick_Scarpino, or on Instagram at Nick_Scarpino. And then if you want to check out some of our videos or podcasts, we're kind of funny on podcast services like SoundCloud and iTunes. You can go there and see all of our work, including the morning show that I do every day. Or if you want to see the videos, you can go to youtube.com/kindafunny and subscribe.
Awesome. So it's been great having you here, Nick.
Thanks, man. It's good catching up.
So this has been the last episode of the Creative Hustler Show. And if you like it, please click the like button below and share it with your friends. Until next time.